When a 56-year-old grandmother drove away from her Blooming Prairie, Minnesota home one cold March day in 2018, she left behind many things. She wanted to leave behind her nickname of Losing Streak Lois and become someone different, and along her way south, she'd try to become a new version of herself, one she called Stormy Liberty. But what she really was leaving behind was the murdered body of her husband and more questions than anyone could easily answer. And she would find another identity, a new her, by killing again. Join us as we look into the strange case of Lois Riess, who took a chance on mayhem that led investigators on a multi-state manhunt. Before we begin, we would like to extend our deepest sympathies to the family and loved ones of the victims of Lois Riess.
Could I speak with a detective possibly? My name's Greg Oswald, or a deputy sheriff. We have right up to the point of missing person here. My business partner, and there seems to be something seriously wrong.
Okay, how so?
Well, I haven't been able to talk to him for 16 days, and neither of any of the employees. His home is 100 feet from where we raise these waxworms in Blooming, just south of Blooming. We're getting very strange signals from his wife, who has now, there are, this past week, receipts and checks missing out of a bag that our account is supposed to pick up Monday. He's supposed to be at a fishing tournament. He's been sick, and no one is supposed to call him. So we've been getting very strange. Well, this is my family's old farm that I'm still in business there. Dave and Lois have a farm. There is a history of this woman having $300,000 mistakes in her life recently, and gambling issues, some mental issues. I'm very leery about doing this, but now I've got 4 employees there. I'm in Montana. I live here, but I got 4 really upset employees. They said, Dave's missing.
Over the next couple of hours, members of the Dodge County Sheriff's Office and the Blooming Prairie Police Department arrived at the home of David and Lois Riess. It was a cold day with temperatures hovering around freezing and a light snow covering the ground. 2 of David's employees from the waxworm farm met the officers there, both worried about their boss and friend. Initially, the officers found the home locked, with a couple of lights on within, but no one would come to the door or answer phone calls to the numbers they had. Officers and the 2 friends of David Riess began walking around the home, looking into the windows to see if they could spot anyone. At the back of the house, they could see a light coming from a bathroom window. The window was at least partially open. Blooming Prairie Police Officer Daniel Peach was boosted up to the window by Corporal Jacob Peterson. Looking through the window, Peach saw an obviously deceased individual lying on its back, partially covered by a blanket. Both of the corpse's feet were sticking out from under that blanket. The employees helped the officers find a key to the house that had been hidden under the hood of an LP gas tank, and they made entry. Coming through the garage, officers saw that David's truck was still there. However, his wife Lois's 2005 white Cadillac Escalade was gone. As they entered the house, nothing looked out of place. The kitchen was clean and there were no signs of any struggle. A television in the living room was on, but the cable box had been turned off. The laundry room showed recent signs of use, and the door to the master bedroom was open. When they entered the master bedroom, they could see that a door to the master bath had been closed and a rolled-up towel had been pushed against the void at the bottom of the door to create something of a seal. They opened that door and found 54-year-old David Riess's body in the chilly bathroom, dead for at least a couple of days. Crime scene investigators from the sheriff's office arrived on the scene shortly afterwards. It was Friday, March the 23rd. Up until now, no one besides his wife had seen the man since the couple had been at their grandchild's basketball game on March the 11th. That night, according to the family members, the two had an argument, one that probably continued once they were home. Where was Lois now? Had she fled the scene, or had she become a victim of the crime as well, and was now in real danger? A BOLO, or Be on the Lookout notice, was sent out immediately for the woman and her vehicle. Examining the body, investigators found that David had been shot 3 times at relatively close range. As the body was rolled over, they found a single .22 caliber long rifle shell casing impressed into the skin of his back. The autopsy would later show that the first shot had struck him in the right side of his chest, striking his heart and piercing the left ventricle and atrium, then going through to the lower lobe of his right lung. A small 40-grain projectile was recovered from within the body. The second round had entered through the right side of his back, piercing his heart and lung as well. The bullet could not be recovered from the wound. The third gunshot wound was to his left arm, just below the elbow, with an exit wound 1.5 inches below that. It was assumed that the third wound was obtained as he attempted to defend himself from the shots. A bullet would later be recovered from the wall of the walk-in closet in the bathroom. A shell casing matching the one found under David's body was found in the kitchen of the home, and a partially emptied magazine and loose bullets were found in the master bedroom of the home, along with an unlocked and empty fire safe. So, who were these people? David was a veteran of the United States Navy who had met his wife while stationed in California. The couple were married in 1982 and returned to Rochester, Minnesota, in the area where they had both grown up. David loved fishing and hunting and boating, and eventually opened a bait shop that he ran for a number of years while Lois provided daycare and babysitting services from their home. In 2010, David would close the store and go into the business of raising waxworms to be sold to bait shops around the region. By most accounts, the couple were moderately successful in their businesses, and they were the parents of 3 children and had a growing number of grandchildren. Lois would, however, develop a bit of a gambling problem over the years, frequenting nearby casinos and regularly purchasing lottery tickets. She quickly found herself over her head, and it created strain on the couple and their finances. At one point, a social services worker had to file an affidavit against Lois for allegedly stealing money from her own mentally disabled sister's guardianship account and spending at least part of it at a local casino. While no charges were filed, Lois was required to pay back just over $100,000. There is no record of her actually paying back the money that could be found. Authorities in the surrounding area and nearby casinos began nicknaming her Losing Streak Lois, and she became known to them for reports of her stealing money and items to cover her gambling habits. At home, it became standard practice for David to never bring receipts or business checks to the house, instead leaving them securely at the waxworm farm in the office there, in the adjacent barn to their property. And therein lies a big clue as to what happened. A handwritten timeline provided by the employee said that he had last seen Lois on Thursday, March the 22nd, when she had come down to help them put together a large order. She had left before lunch that day, after saying that while David was still sick, he was planning on participating in a fishing tournament that weekend in Spring Valley, Illinois. The next day, the bag, where all of the company's checks from customers was kept, was missing, and David did not show up at the sign-in for the tournament. This prompted the welfare check that led to the discovery of his body. But Lois was already gone, and David, according to autopsy estimates, had been dead for some time. Another look at the timeline says the employee had not seen David or spoken to him since March the 8th. And the last report of anyone seeing David was at the basketball game on March the 11th when the two of them had their argument. The very next day, Lois came down to the waxworm farm and told them that David was sick and would be staying at home and to please not call him. Investigators would come to believe that David had been shot and killed by Lois on the night of March the 11th. Had she been living in the house with the doorway to the bathroom sealed against the smell of a dead body, allowing the cold wind from outside through the open window to slow the process down? It seems that that's pretty much what happened, but it seems that during that time, Lois was living it up a bit. St. Patrick's Day had always been a big event for her, and she celebrated with gusto, always reminding them that they had a little bit of the Irish in them. And that year, for St. Patrick's Day, she was going to do it up right. On the day before, March the 16th, Friday, she headed out to get her hair done at a Fantastic Sam's salon in preparation for a night of hitting the casino. The woman who worked on her hair, Elizabeth Sorensen, would detail her interaction with Lois that day.
Can you tell me a little bit about the interaction? You told me that she was a walk-in, a first-time walk-in, and you did her hair. Just tell me about that.
Yep, she came in and she was going to be going out for St. Patrick's Day. She said that she was going to be going to Diamond Joe Casino, so she wanted her hair to look like Peggy Bundy and have it nice and big, and so we gave her a blowout and kind of curled the ends out and made it nice and big and put some back combing in it, and then she was going to continue her look at home and add some sparkles along her part line where we had parted her hair, and she was going to come back in and show me her hair, but she never ended up coming back in, so.
Okay, do you remember what time that was at all?
It was in the afternoon. Not positive on the time, but I want to say she left around 3-ish.
So it was sometime after lunch, you'd have to say.
Yep.
Okay. Do you remember, did she say anything else about going to Diamond Joe's that night or anything?
She had just mentioned that she was going to be going and meeting up with some friends, and that she really liked to unwind and gamble.
Okay.
And she was going to be all dressed up for St. Patty's Day.
Okay.
That night, she would make her appearance at the Diamond Joe Worth Casino in Northwood, Iowa, some 40 miles from their home. This was her go-to spot, her casino of choice at that moment. She came in and spent most of her time in the casino's restaurant. There, a waitress would remember serving her and would later speak to the investigators.
Sure. And then one of my other coworkers said, she messaged me, and at my break, I work at a school, and on my break at work, she said, is this that lady that used her husband's credit card the other day? And I was like, no, it can't be. And so and she's like, do you remember their last name? And I said, I only remember first names. It was David and Lois. And I was like, I don't remember, because David's name was on the card, and Lois was somebody else and the casino identified her as Lois, and when I looked at her ID, it was Lois. And so I opened up the news story, and it took me forever, and when I opened it up, it was her name, and so I said, I don't know, I called my friend, and I said, I don't know, do I call, is it I don't know, you know what I mean, I don't know what any of the lists. I had seen news stories leading up to, something about Blooming, is it related to stuff in Blooming Prairie? Yeah, I had seen that the other day, but I'm not real familiar with the area, so I didn't read it.
Okay, let me back up a little bit.
The night that she was in, I had questioned her. I said, table 51, she's paying with a credit card.
So you remember it was table 51?
Yep.
All right.
I'm like, she's paying with a credit card, and it's in a name David. And some names, do go both ways, but I said, I've never had somebody do that when they're alone, and it not be you know what I mean? Me not know them.
Right. She's a female and it's a male's name on the credit card.
My mom's taken my dad's credit card places and paid for things. So I was like, what should I do? And so I asked my supervisor, and we called security, and I called security over, and they said, well, do you feel comfortable IDing her? Or do you want us to ID her? And I said, no, she's been really nice to me this whole meal. I don't have any problem IDing her. I just wanted to know the, kind of correct protocol. And so she did provide me with ID. And
so you asked her for ID?
Yep. And she provided me with ID with her name.
And can you just describe her for me, what you recall
She's
her?
Blonde. She's not skinny, but she wasn't super heavyweight.
So medium build?
Right, yeah. And she's blonde, a dirty blonde, I would say. I don't think it's as blonde as the pictures are, honestly. I think it's more of a dirty blonde, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And she wasn't standing, but, when I saw her, I didn't stand next to her, but she was taller than me, but she wasn't tall. I'm only 5'2", so most people are taller than me.
And so do you remember about when this was?
Yeah, it was between 6 and 7:30 that night, I think. I know that she was in there. I mean, I can tell you, like, she sat and she had, like, an appetizer, a salad. I mean, she was completely relaxed, had a full meal, and I remember her sitting in there. She was in there for, like, an hour and a half. I know I apologized to her because it was taking so long. And she was like, no, it's fine. I'm not in any hurry. Like, and I mean, she's a regular. I've seen her in, I don't know if I've waited on her as much as some of the others. She typically sits at the bar in the wood fire. Okay. And so I've seen her in there, so I mean, she was calm and she wasn't rude or anything, so I guess no red flags, so it completely surprised me by this news.
So 6 to 7:30, and this was on Thursday night?
Thursday evening, yep.
So Thursday the 22nd,
yeah,
100% sure.
Yep,
Okay.
because I only worked Thursday and Friday this last week.
Yep, and so she came in by herself?
Yep.
Just by herself the whole time, left by herself, never anybody else with her?
I never saw anyone else with her.
Okay.
The whole time, she never said anything about being there with anyone. She didn't, like, you know, like sometimes people will come in and, like, I have another guy that comes in and his wife gambles and he just eats and talks to people. That's all he does. So she never said anything about being with anyone. I've never, in the previous times that I've seen her here, I've never seen her with anyone ever.
Okay. And you've seen her here other times before this?
She sat at the bar. She said she's always by herself. I've never seen her with anyone. That's why, I think that's what the major thing with, like, the red flag with the credit card. Because I'd never seen her with anyone else. Like, maybe if I had seen her with her husband before, it wouldn't have, like, bothered me. I'd be like, oh, he's off doing something. Sure. But I had never seen her with anyone.
Lois would come back on March the 22nd and spend the night at an adjoining Country Inn and Suites property right next door to the casino. CCTV cameras would capture her checking in. She seems to be having quite a good time and even called an old friend, Louise Ashelon, to meet her at the casino the next day. Lois, at this point, had also gone to the bank that held her husband's business account and cashed all of the business checks and moved some money into her account, roughly $11,000. She was ready to roll.
Hello?
Hi, is this Louise?
Yes, it is. Is this Mike Anderson?
It is. It is.
All right.
Sorry I missed you. I just wanted to call you back, and I'm sure you're kind of aware of what I'm calling about.
Yes.
And so I guess I was in the Albert Lea area yesterday, but today I'm not right at the moment. So if it's okay with you, if we can just talk on the phone for a little bit.
That would be okay.
Okay. Can you just start out, Louise, you're associated or acquainted with Lois?
I've known her since she was 10 years old.
Okay.
She called me on Friday about 11:30, quarter to 12, somewhere in there, and she asked me to meet her at Diamond Joe's. Okay. She said that David was gone and that she wanted to spend some time at the casino. She was an avid gambler, and I go, like, I live close, so I go maybe once a month just for relaxation. She's a high roller. I'm not. She came at about 2 o'clock, I think it was, and we sat at that one machine, the money machine, where it flies around. It's just a 50-cent machine. So anyway, we stayed there for a while, and then we visited a little bit, and not one iota of a problem. You know what I'm saying? I think I was the most shocked of anybody when it was Sunday night when I heard the news, the 10 o'clock news.
And so when you meet with her, though, everything seems normal. She doesn't give any indication that there's any problems or anything like that.
Well, she did say that David was gone, and it wasn't like for the weekend, you know, but he's a businessman, and he used to do trucking out of that fish place, you know, so that was not out of the, it wasn't anything alarming either, nothing. It was just,
So she said he was gone, meaning gone like traveling somewhere, like...
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And that's not uncommon for him to do that.
No, because they did trucking, all that, it's that fish, it's a fish, worms, I guess.
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you guys spent some time at the casino that afternoon, and then...
Well, it was from, I actually saw her from 2 o'clock until like 3:30. I thought when we were going to walk out together, I thought we could walk together, and she said, no, I'm parked over by the hotel. So in my mind, I just figured, oh, that's Lois. She wants to gamble some more and get her money back.
Okay. She likes to gamble.
Obviously she does. And I know David wasn't fond of that. They work hard for their money.
Sure.
And they are successful.
Lois, however, was not sticking around. She was heading out of the area, heading south for warmer climes and whatever the road was going to bring her. She would stop at a come-and-go convenience store and gas station on her way out. She grabbed a sandwich, topped off the fuel tank of her Escalade, and asked the cashier for directions. Hand-drawn maps, later found in her car, would show that she had picked a route to Fort Myers Beach, Florida, a place she and David had been invited to visit by some acquaintances back home, but never had. Apparently, it seemed like there was no better time than now to make that journey. Unfortunately, alone. The couple that had invited them, Therese and Rod Coster, were originally from Rochester, Minnesota, and owned a number of properties in Fort Myers Beach, Florida, that they rented out to vacationers, many from their old hometown. Their daughter, Bree Riva, who also ran the family's automobile lot in Rochester, received a call from a woman calling herself Stormy Liberty, asking for an address in Fort Myers for the Costers. Since this wasn't an unusual occurrence, she provided it. Lois would turn up at the Costers' home the next day. By this time, however, Lois's disappearance and murder of David had made national news. She was, at that time, still just a person of interest and was only wanted for the potential theft of business checks and money. Therese spotted her and recognized her.
She has platinum, almost white hair in a ponytail.
Tess says the woman was looking around at the rental properties. She asked if she needed any help.
Our eyes met, and oh my goodness, my heart skipped a beat. It was Lois.
Tess knew Lois was missing after her husband was shot and killed at their Blooming Prairie home in March.
She shook her head and she said, wrong house, wrong house.
Lois took off in her SUV.
We were so scared.
Tess ran back inside and told her husband to call 911.
The sheriff's department on Fort Myers Beach was so worried about us. They came over and said, you guys have to be careful. Shocked. Had no idea. Both Lois and Dave are the sweetest people, or were. I don't know what happened.
Lois fled the scene, but decided to double down on Fort Myers Beach. She dug in and followed through on a plan that she probably had made during her long drive south. That $11,000 in cash she had worked out was probably nearing the end, as her credit cards were going to alert authorities where she was if she used them. Her plan required her to make a new friend, one that looked as much like Lois as possible, and she found one only a few blocks away from her encounter with Therese Coster. Pamela Hutchinson was visiting Fort Myers Beach for a few months after the death of her husband. She was in town to visit with a friend or two and, more importantly, to scatter her beloved husband's ashes on Sanibel Island. It was a tough time for her, and along came Lois, who had recently lost a husband as well. The two struck up a fast friendship, hanging out and going out for meals and drinks. Lois and Pamela were spotted on CCTV outside the Smoking Oyster Brewery on the old San Carlos Boulevard on April the 5th, together, having met just the day before. The two were roughly the same height and build and had similar facial types and similar hair color. None of these were coincidences, investigators believe. That evening, the two would return to the property that Pamela was renting, Unit 404 of the Snug Harbor at Marina Village complex, Late in the evening, CCTV footage would capture Lois leaving the unit, standing outside the door emotionally overcome, possibly crying, and then going back downstairs only to return in a few moments with a bag. Hours later, she would emerge again, carrying a large white trash bag, heading downstairs, returning again with yet another bag, and repeating the process all over again. She would then leave the property and not come back. During that period of time, someone claiming to be Pamela called the front desk and asked if she could extend her stay at the Snug Harbor for a few more days. The person, claiming to be Pam, then paid using one of her credit cards. Strangely enough, a different one than she had used at the time of the original check-in. The days were booked, and no one checked in for a few days. What no one could know that inside the master bathroom of the place, Pamela Hutchinson had been shot and left to lay in the bathroom floor, covered with a blanket, much like David Riess had been in Minnesota. Medical examiners would discover the fatal shots had been made by the same type of .22 caliber pistol that had been used in killing David, and that the shots apparently had been fired through a bedroom pillow held close to the gun to muffle the sound of the shots. Pamela's purse was found on the counter in the kitchen. It had been rummaged through. Her cash, jewelry, credit, and debit cards had been removed. The hat she had been seen wearing earlier was missing as well. That morning, Lois would drive her Escalade to Bowditch Point at Fort Myers Beach, about a mile away, and abandon the vehicle. After walking back to Snug Harbor, she would steal Pamela's car and go to a local branch of Wells Fargo, wearing Pamela's hat and bearing her ID and debit card. She would withdraw $5,000 in cash from Pamela's bank account. Lois had now assumed the identity of Pamela Hutchinson. She would then travel to Ocala, Florida, about 240 miles north, to check in at a Hilton hotel. She ordered room service twice and rented a movie. All of the expenses were put on Pamela Hutchinson's credit cards. She signed as Pamela and provided her ID as well. The next day, April the 7th, Lois, posing as Pamela, would use her debit card to make 3 more withdrawals at ATMs in the area for $500 each. She would also pick up a new low-cost cell phone and register it under her alias of Stormy Liberty. It would be April the 9th before anyone would find Pamela's body in the bathroom, where the door had been sealed up with a rolled-up towel, just like the one in the Riess's home in Minnesota. Police put out a BOLO notice for her, and the U.S. Marshals began posting pictures of Lois Riess on digital billboards throughout the region, offering a $6,000 reward for information leading to her arrest. Lois's Escalade was found later that day. Lois, however, had already left the state and was headed west to Texas. In Louisiana, a license plate reader would make an ID on Pamela's car as it traveled west along I-10, but no connection was made at that time. There was also a report that Lois had won a $1,500 prize at a Louisiana-based casino and claimed it using her own ID. On April the 8th, Lois attempted to make a withdrawal from Pamela's bank account again at a gas station ATM, but the $200 request was declined. She paid for her gas and other items with cash and moved on. Later that day, Pamela's car was spotted driving through Refugio, Texas. Once in Texas, Lois headed to South Padre Island, a well-known vacation destination near the Mexican border. She would check into a Motel 6 there and hole up in room 227. There is evidence that she made friends with another woman again, but for some reason the murderous grandmother was unable to repeat the process that she had used in Florida. On April the 19th, a tip was called in to the South Padre Island Police Department from an employee of Dirty Al's restaurant that Lois had just walked in, looked at the menu board, and then strolled back out, looking as if she was waiting to meet someone. Police were dispatched to the restaurant immediately, but she could not be found. On a hunch, an officer decided to walk across the parking lot to check another nearby restaurant, the Sea Ranch. Lois was found to be sitting at the bar, chatting with folks around her. Officer Aguilar quickly called for backup. As soon as all of the exits were covered, officers entered the bar and made their arrest. Her crime spree was over. The good times had come to an end. She was taken in and booked, no longer as Stormy Liberty or Pamela Hutchinson, but just as Lois Riess, a grandmother with a bad gambling habit and blood on her hands. She would be brought before a judge in Brownsville, Texas, who would hold her over for extradition. The judge informed her that she was wanted by both Minnesota and Florida authorities and would be released to whichever came to get her first. Warrants were also given to search her room at the Motel 6. Within, they found a trove of evidence, including a mix of hers and Pamela's jewelry, Pamela's hat that Lois had worn to the bank, and 2 pistols, including the .22 caliber pistol used to kill both David and Pamela, and a 9mm semi-automatic. Scissors and a roll of duct tape could be found as well in her personal belongings, perhaps to be used later in a replay of her earlier murder plot should she find another look-alike victim. Investigators would also find Pamela Hutchinson's credit cards among Lois's possessions, along with the key fob to her 2005 white Acura. The car was found near the Sea Ranch and was impounded by local police and sealed as evidence. Notes found within the room spelled out the route that she had taken from Fort Myers Beach to South Padre Island and included notes on how to get to the Sea Ranch and a time to be there. She had possibly already lined up another victim. Luckily, no one fell into that trap before she was arrested. Florida would be the first state to come for Lois, and she accompanied representatives of the Lee County Sheriff's Office, which oversees the area around Fort Myers Beach. Representatives from the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension were also on hand. Lois would be brought in for questioning. The woman, who had stayed ahead of all prying eyes and investigators for nearly a month, no longer seemed like some kind of criminal genius. She was just a tired, older woman who wanted her medications. She seemed to have no idea that she had been the focus of national attention at that time.
So basically, we're both here today to kind of talk to you or maybe ask you some questions about what brought you to South Padre Island. And if you'd like to talk to us, that's fine. If you don't want to talk to us, that's fine. If you want to answer certain questions but not certain questions, that's fine. But more or less, I got some questions for you, and Mark had some questions for you, and that's the gist of what we're here, and that's the gist of the conversation I want to have with you. Okay. Like I said, my first name's Jay. This is Mark. If you have any questions, you can refer to me as Jay. There's no big deal.
I guess the first question I have is I want to get a lawyer.
Okay, that's fine. I understand you read your Miranda rights the other night, right? Yeah. Did you understand all those rights? When they read them to you, did you understand each and every one of them?
No.
Okay. Do you want me to read them to you again, just so you know them? Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have any questions about the next step that's going to take place?
Of getting a lawyer.
Yeah. You're going to be, right now, the state of Florida has an active warrant for you. I'm actually from the Sheriff's Office in Florida, from the County Sheriff's Office, okay? Right. And the state of Florida does have active warrants for you for homicide, okay, for grand theft of a motor vehicle, for grand theft over $5,000, and for something called identity theft. So you're going to be going back to Florida to face those charges. After that case is done, more than likely you'll have some issues to deal with from back home, where that case is going to start, okay? So, like I said, nothing against me, nothing against you. You were nice to me, you're cordial with me, I appreciate that, you're cordial with us. So, it's going to be a long road ahead of everybody, okay?
We've used several lawyers in Minnesota before.
Mm-hmm.
That should be where I'm going.
Okay.
You think?
Okay, that's fair enough, and that's something that you'll have to take up. Sometimes lawyers in Minnesota aren't able to practice law in Florida, so that's something that you'll have to discuss with your attorney. But if you can't, like I said,
I wonder if I should discuss it with my children.
Well, I know your children have been concerned about you. My detective and actually one of the representatives from Dodge County has been in touch with them, and I know your grandchildren have been really concerned about you too. So that's an opportunity. You'll have an opportunity to use the phone and talk to them fairly soon, I believe.
Okay, I just want their guidance on which attorneys I should use.
Yeah.
One question I have is, do my kids know I'm alive and I'm here?
Yes. I don't know if you know this or not, but your your whole story has been national news, okay? It broke last night. It broke last night that you were arrested in South Padre Island, that you're alive and well, and that you were found by the U.S. Marshals and the local police department here. So,
so they know.
I don't personally know that they know, but I can tell you that every local news media outlet nationwide has picked up the story.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, I just wanted to know that I'm...
And I believe one of the investigators outside with you guys has contact with your kids.
Yeah,
I think Bobby? Is Bobby one?
No, that's
Billy.
my brother.
Billy.
Billy.
Yeah.
I think they may have been in contact with Billy. So.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And once you get down there too, we can tell them some of your concerns that you maybe have involved into the bed and things like that, but they'd be better addressed or be better prepared to answer some of those questions.
I just didn't want to stay on the bench for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
No.
Because I'm not going to get better.
No, they're gonna. This is just like a temporary holding facility until you get through the paperwork process of everything. And as you can imagine, with something this big, there's a lot of paperwork we have to do. So,
okay.
Just like the reason we couldn't get your medication right now is because we're executing a search warrant on the hotel and the vehicle, and we can't walk into your hotel room without a judge letting me know that I can.
Right.
So, and that's what's taking a little bit of time when it comes to getting the medication that you take every morning or whatnot, okay?
All right.
Lois would be charged in Florida with first-degree murder with a firearm, as well as a number of other charges involving theft of identity, grand theft of an automobile, personal property, and money. She was looking at a death penalty. In Minnesota, she was facing charges of first- or second-degree murder for the killing of David Riess. Originally, she pled not guilty in both cases and was extradited to Minnesota to stand trial there first for the murder of her husband. There, she would tell investigators that on the night of the argument after the basketball game, in a heated moment, her husband had grabbed the pistol and handed it to her, telling her to end her own life. She said that instead she turned the pistol on him in self-defense and fired 2 or 3 times, killing him. Prosecutors were not swayed by her statements and proceeded with the first-degree murder charge, along with a host of others including theft. She would end up pleading guilty to the murder charge and be given a life sentence. In Florida, she was brought before the court to stand for the charges as well. Now, looking down the barrel of a death penalty, Lois once again decided to enter a plea of guilty in exchange for a life sentence. Lois's run had ended, and she will spend the rest of her days behind bars with no chance of ever seeing freedom again. Her short-lived run as Stormy Liberty ended as just another bad gamble. If you found this case compelling, don't forget to like the video, comment down below and give us your take on it, and please subscribe to the channel. Also, hit the notification bell in order to stay up to date each time we reveal a new shocking case. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's lurking in the shadows.